Let's see what's under the hood of today's guest.
It's a delicate balance here because you want to make sure that you have the right support when the developer needs it, but the developers also want to do stuff themselves at their own pace, and they don't want to be bothered, right? So, making sure that you support them and meet them where they're at.
Welcome to Under the Hood of Developer Marketing, the podcast devoted to developer marketing, relations, evangelism, and advocacy. I'm Stathis Georgakopoulos, and I'm your host. In each episode, I welcome a guest from the developer marketing world. We talk about best practices, challenges, lessons learned, and share insights, data, and experiences to help you boost your DevRel game, talk to, and engage with developers. This podcast is brought to you by SlashData, the leading analyst of the developer economy, and DevRelX.com, a hub devoted to providing resources for developer marketing professionals, including developer ecosystem trends, news and job openings, webinars, a book, and a bi-weekly digest you can subscribe to. Access them all at DevRelX.com. Hello everyone, and a happy new year! Welcome to the 7th episode of Under the Hood of Developer Marketing Season 3 and our first episode for 2021, a year we all hope will be much better than the last one. Hope you're ready for our new episodes, and allow me to introduce today's guest, Leandro Margulis, who is the VP of Developer Relations in Unify ID. Leandro, welcome to the show.
Hi, here from Under the Hood. Very nice to be with everybody.
We're very happy to have you. Leandro, when you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, well, it depends on the stage, right? I'm originally, in case you were wondering where my name and accent is from, I'm originally from Buenos Aires, Argentina, born and raised there. And then I moved to the US in my 20s, in the early 2000s. And, I always wanted to build stuff, right? That's why I decided to go for engineering. And I always wanted to make people's lives better. That's why I ended up deciding to do industrial and systems engineering. The joke was always engineers make things, industrial and systems engineers make things better, just because we do stuff, we improve on stuff, right? Business process improvement and so on and so forth. I also wanted to travel the world, which I got a chance to do while working in management consulting all over the world, and then for different conferences and everything. And I did get a chance to go to Greece as well, and I can't wait for COVID to be over to go to the Greek islands at some point.
Yeah, and from my part, I cannot wait for COVID to be over to visit the US.
So we can do a home swap for a little bit and see what happens.
Yeah. Couch surfing that used to be, maybe something like that. So how, from a young boy, who wanted to build stuff, tell us about yourself. How did you end up in the role of Developer Relations VP?
Yeah, so basically, let me tell you a little bit about my story and my thinking process, how I got here. So, as I said, right, I am an engineer from undergrad, but then I got a chance in the early 2000s when I moved to the US, to the capital city of South America, Miami, Florida, to finish my engineering degree. I realized that I was missing some business stuff, and as a good engineer, I figured, well, what's the most efficient way to get the most work experience in the least amount of time to eventually do an MBA, because I thought that would help me. So I ended up in management consulting. I worked for Deloitte for a couple of years, traveling the world and helping other companies make their business process better. I did my MBA at Yale. During my MBA at Yale, I got a chance to start my own company in IoT before it was called IoT. In RFID, I don't know if you know what that is, radio frequency identification.
Yeah.
So I have a patent for tracking pretty much high value assets outdoors and in harsh environments. I got the entrepreneurial bug after that, moved to the Bay Area, and I've been in the San Francisco Bay Area ever since, working in different startups in different stages of growth and helping also big companies start new lines of business. Basically, I always been more on the business strategy, partnerships, product side, and it is for the last 5 years that I kind of stumble upon developer relations. The reality is, and we'll get deeper into this as we go deeper into the discussion, but the role of the developer has been changing, and the developer has a lot more influence and decision-making power on the choosing the different technology tools that a company has. So whatever you do in terms of technology, you need to make sure that the developers keep you top of mind. And that's pretty much how I ended up in developer relations. And the reality is that I don't see it only as developer relations in some places it reports under product or under marketing or under engineering. In the cases that I've been working in, developer relations has been its own line of business, with the developer portal being the product and the different APIs or SDKs being the offerings. So really catering to the audience and having a chance to create a lot of resources for developers to build cool stuff. So, I'm a builder as an engineer myself, and I love enabling others to build as well.
I think this is the key, right? Not only, wanting to build stuff yourself, but actually enabling people to build their own. And I think this is the core of developer relations, at least the way I see it.
Yeah, and it's also super rewarding because you may have certain ideas, certain hypotheses of what people are going to use your stuff for. But once you put it out there, like the community surprises you in the ways that they use your stuff. So that has been very rewarding as well, and it also gives you a lot of product feedback to improve your product, and also get into new lines of businesses as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's great. I definitely want to hear more things you have to say, but before we jump into this, let's talk data. Can you please pick a graph from devrelx.com/trends and tell us why that graph stands out from you?
So I can actually choose a couple different ones and highlight certain things, but one that was one that was popping out to me. There's one that you have about ranking of reasons for adoption of a technology, right? And of course, pricing is a big factor, but also the support and documentation ends up being either the second factor or being tied up with pricing, right? And the reality is that and it's a delicate balance here, because you want to make sure that you have the right support when the developer needs it, but the developers also want to do stuff themselves at their own pace, and they don't want to be bothered, right? So making sure that you support them and meet them where they're at in terms of having all the documentation available online, and then being there and being very responsive, either if you have a Slack community or a forum, or just a support email or a phone number, whatever you end up having, that you're responsive when the developer needs it, so they keep you top of mind and they have a good perception of you. So I think that's actually spot on, and that was very interesting to see. One of the things that you don't have there, but I'm excited to see soon, and we were kind of discussing it before before we started the official interview, is how many more developers are we going to have after COVID, if people took that time to actually increase their coding skills or go to boot camps and so on. Because that's one of the things that, and we're going to talk a little bit about this a little bit later, but who is a typical developer is evolving, and there's a lot of people coming on their second and third career from a boot camp. They're getting a lot more opportunities, and they're enriching the developer community because they also have other experiences from other work that creates better products and better experiences, right? So I'm excited to see how that's going to evolve moving forward.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll have the data to support that. Our developer economic survey is actually running now. I think everyone who wants to maybe also take part, you should visit developereconomics.com for if you have a say on this. And I really encourage you to do so, not only because there are some cool gifts we're giving out there, but also because, as you see, the results can lead to great conversations like the one we're having. And stay tuned at DevRel Trends, because I think, and spoiler alert, you might have an answer to that pretty soon.
I'm excited to see how the results look.
Yeah, that's great. Now, until the results are in, let's pick your brains. Since we have you here, what do you love most about developer relations?
There's a lot of things that I love about developer relations. One we talked about is enabling others to build. It's been rewarding to see what people end up building with your tools. And how they combine it with other tools. Also being able to help other people grow, right? Grow as a developer, increase their skill set, and so on and so forth. And also, how people change roles. One of your other graphs shows about, how people are segmenting the developer audiences. And the reality is that somebody that is a full-time developer at a company could also be a hobbyist at night or in their free time. And they find you on their free time and then they bring you to work, right? And it's been rewarding to see the cool things that people have built either as a student or as a side project, and then it ends up becoming something that they bring to their job or that they start their own company and so on. So it's been very interesting to see our community members growing.
Yeah, and it's been great, during this podcast, this question obviously has, come up a lot of times. And for me, if you want, in a way, as a spectator of developer relations, I think it's very important, how its key part is to enable people, to do the things they want.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, giving them the tools to do so.
And it's been really great. And now you authored the chapter on our book, Developer Marketing and Relations, The Essential Guide, on our third edition. Yours was one of the great chapters, why we needed to have a new edition. What was the topic you discussed there?
Well, thank you so much for feeding my Argentinian ego there. I was actually honored and humbled to be invited to participate as well. I actually touched on the topic of building an inclusive developer community, and we cannot touch that the role of the developer is evolving, and also in terms of their decision-making power and influence to choose different tools, but also who is a developer is evolving. It's it's not only people coming from an undergrad or graduate degree or a PhD in computer science, but we also have people coming from boot camps on their second or third career, and they enrich the community in other ways, and they bring other work experiences to what they're doing, and also come up with different applications to disrupt industries that developers in the past perhaps were not thinking much about. So it's been interesting to see that, and also as we grow as people, and people start having families or people start retiring, we become part of other demographics, and we start looking at solutions for those demographics. And it's been very rewarding to see. I got a chance. This is my this is my second role in developer relations, and it's been interesting to see. I used to be at TomTom, and basically getting to see map applications and location technologies being used in different, for different use cases, and now in motion-based behavioral biometrics, basically helping authenticate somebody based on the way they move and walk, and all different contextual signals for both authentication, like opening a door, unlocking a door with a phone in your pocket, not even having to take it out, and unlocking a door of a house or a car, as well as using a second factor to authenticate a payment, and also as a signal for fraud. And it's been interesting to see, because it's from many different use cases that you may have not seen before, or in the world that we live now, that we had fires in California in 2020, in addition to the pandemic, and being able, from my previous role in terms of location technologies and using location and data for more efficient emergency response. It's been very rewarding to see what people are thinking in terms of different applications of technologies.
Yeah, and I think this is also one of the best things, but you provide the tools, but then you see people's creativity, jumping in, and you have so many different use case or ideas that they can use your product, real life examples. And honestly, I think it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, and it couldn't have happened, honestly, if we weren't inclusive in the way that we welcome people to the different communities. And in the chapter, I touch upon a couple different details that could make your community feel welcome or not to a new developer. Let me give you a couple quick examples just to portray this, because I think it could be helpful for the audience. As I said, I'm originally from Buenos Aires, Argentina. In Latin America, people have very long names, right? I mean, you have a first name, middle name, first last name, second last name, and sometimes even more, right? I mean, and that may not even fit in the typical fields that we put for first name and last name to register for an account, for to get API keys and so on, right? So there's some little details that you can change. For example, instead of asking for first name and last name, you can ask for full name, and then you can do a little parsing in the back end, or you can put first name and then ask how you do want to be called for a nickname or something like that. And that would make people feel much more welcome than having to go through putting first name or last name. A personal story there, for example, is I can tell you some of my family members had to get some documentation in the US, and there was not enough characters in the field for your driver's license, right? And those little things don't make you feel very welcome, right?
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I remember this example because you also joined us for the Future Developer Summit. We had a panel together, how to step up your DevRel game. And, I was listening to it. And honestly, I never thought about it. How something that might seem to us so basic. Okay, this is your name here. You just put your first name, then you put your last name, and you're done. But this is not true for everyone, and I think this is what inclusion has to do. Making everything easy to access for everybody, no matter their background.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you also remember that from the event, and I'm glad it was salient enough. And it's not just about making this as a feature, but what I wanted to do is illustrate a point that this may be a simple thing, but it's all about how people perceive what you're doing. It's a gesture to make people feel more welcome, right? I also learn a lot, and I try to implement some of the principles that Stack Overflow has implemented in terms of not only gamification, but for example, making certain signals to make people feel welcome and to be kind, right? In terms of, for example, when somebody's new in a community, having a tag about having some kind of an icon that they're either new to the community or an early adopter of something, and for others to welcome them and also be perhaps more tolerant or open to the questions that others may think they're super simple, but for somebody new, they're not, right? Even if the question was asked before or a similar question was asked before, the idea is to bring people into the fold and to grow, right? Not to expel. So we need to welcome others, and the best way to do that is in a way educating them through the community.
Yeah, exactly. I agree 100% there. By the way, the Developer Marketing and Relations, the Essential Guide book, has recently published the third edition, thanks to great people like Leandro. And anyone interested, you can find it on paperback or Kindle editions at Amazon, or an EPUB version at DevRelX.com. So you kind of mentioned it, but I want us to go a bit deeper. So how integral is community to developer relations?
Well, it's definitely integral, and it has a lot of benefits for the community and for the company as well. But it's also delicate, right? I mean, the reality is there are people using your products, or you hope that you have people using your products. So there's different stages in the community development as well, right? I mean, some people just want to start and build their community from scratch on their blog, their forum, their developer portal. Sometimes when you're starting, that may not be the best, but there's probably different active communities already that could benefit from what you're building or doing. So my suggestion is always to first start looking where the people that could use your stuff are being active and hanging out and being active there. And then there will be topics that are relevant at a certain level there. And then there may be other things that they need to, you may need to enable in other ways. One of the biggest learnings for me, and this was a learning from TomTom, right? I mean, there were a lot of people talking about TomTom Maps APIs, for example, on Stack Overflow, and there were certain questions coming there. But then we were getting a lot of emails on support about other topics, more about people already integrating and getting stuck somewhere and so on. Those were great in terms of for us to actually learn and make some improvements in the documentation as well as the product. But once we actually, at that point, we had critical mass of people using it, and then we launched the forum, and it was kind of magical to see the activity from the first day in the forum, basically unlocking the value in terms of people that were stuck in a certain place, that they were not the only ones, and they were helping each other when another developer got stuck in a similar place. And just unlocking that was kind of magical. It's like you unlocked a way of communication that was not there before, and it helped elevate our credibility, elevate the developers' credibility, creating great content to help others to use the technology, and also to keep us top of mind, and honestly also reduce the customer support cost as well.
Yes, that's definitely true, and I really love how you mention it. This is actually a thing we had mentioned in our first ever episode of the podcast, where we had Mary Thengval, and it was along with our CEO Andreas Constantinou, where they talked that as long as you have something that you're offering to developers, there is a community somewhere. You just need to find where they are and see what they need, and then work on catering to their needs. I really love it because your example, I think, shows exactly that.
Thank you. No, I'm glad. I'm glad to hear it's also a good sanity check, and it shows really. And in a way, this is a little bit meta, but very appropriate, right? I mean, it is the community of the community, which is, and it's great.
Yeah.
And we need to build our own community because basically the industry of developer marketing and relations, it's relatively nascent and it's evolving. And it's really nice to be part of this community that we can share notes as well and make sure that we're providing what the developer communities need.
Exactly. And honestly, this is one of the things we're trying to do with the podcast too. So I'm very happy you mentioned that. Now, you said it before, you just mentioned it actually. When you're building your own community, what should your strategic priorities be?
I would start to do you really need your own community right now? I don't know how many people, it depends on how many people are using your product and, in what stage your product is and in which stage the people using your product are, right? I mean, so perhaps there is a community out there already that you need to be part of, or more than one that you need to be part of before you start your own community. I know that everybody just sometimes wants to start their own and build their own. I don't know that is for everybody, honestly. And depending on what products you build, if they're only a piece of a puzzle, you may want to be part of another community as well, and where others are, and then in a way you can build a community together with others. And I've seen that working very well as well. So I mean, one of the criteria is do you have critical mass? I mean, that's one of them. Also, are people active in your topic of preference and on your interest somewhere else? What are these? Who are these people? Who are these developers? Where what are they reading? Where do they hang out? Is it a Reddit, a subreddit? Is it Quora? Is it Stack Overflow? Is it Code Project? Is it somewhere else? I don't know. Those are the kind of places that I would look and basically see where you need to find your people, right? See where your people are, and then understand what kind of topics are being discussed regarding what you have in the different places, and see if there's a gap for it to make sense for you to build something on your own. If there is a gap, that there usually is. In my experience with TomTom, the gap was people already using your product, getting stuck in different places, and being able to help them, in addition to getting more direct feedback so we can build a better product. But you have to have critical mass of people integrating and getting stuck in certain places to get to that for it to be worth it to open a forum, right? So the first step, as always, would be just build the portal and have good documentation, and then take it from there in terms of the different kind of communication that you need to build. And let me go a little bit deeper into that, if that's okay, in terms of the type of communication. Yes. There's different types of communication. Basically, one is one to many, one to one, and many to many. And in different stages of your development of your community, you may have different ones. I would say that your developer portal with the documentation is kind of a one-to-many. It's a broadcasting mechanism, right? I mean, people can consume that, but in a way, they have very little interaction. Yes, there may be a contact us or a support or something like that, but that's about it. Then once you have critical mass, you may wanna enable more many-to-many and one-to-one communications through forum and messaging, right? Or even something like a Slack community. I mean, but those are kind of at different stages when you hit certain critical mass numbers. The one thing I want to say there, though, and different people have different views on this. A lot of people want to enable a Slack community, for their audience. I'm not so keen on that at the moment because I feel like the content is being locked in a Slack versus, for example, a forum that then other people can access, and being more inclusive and giving access to your content, which also helps from an SEO perspective, from a portal, and you can actually use the data for FAQs and so on, but also set certain expectations that sometimes are unrealistic in terms of how quickly you can answer to a Slack message versus a forum, and that could also have some damage to your brand in terms of perception if you cannot answer with the agility that the developer is expecting from a Slack message.
Yes, that's true. And I remember the breakdown of different types of communication from your book chapter. So thank you for bringing it up because, it's one of the things that really, really stood out to me. We've said that obviously, actually, inclusivity is key. We mentioned it a bit earlier. We've talked about it in past episode too. So with that in mind, what are some things you can do to make your community more inclusive? As we have people besides socioeconomic backgrounds, geographical backgrounds. As you said it before, it's people who have evolved into different roles and are now developers. So how can you make a community, the community that you're building, actually inclusive?
Well, you need to make people. I mean, we kind of touched on a couple of these things, right? I mean, but in a way to highlight them, you need to make people feel welcome. And there's different ways that you can do that, from having a smooth onboarding experience where people feel like they understand where they're coming from in the way they put their first name and last name or a full name and a nickname, to the way you welcome them into the community and the way the different community members welcome them. And that could be done with different badges, for example, or icons, and the way people ask questions and the way people answer to those questions and the reactions to those questions. You can have proper guidelines. You can enforce the guidelines in a way with nudges instead of policing, and that usually works. And helping people report if they or react if they see something that they believe is not kind. I've seen that work very well. Learning from the learnings from Stack Overflow, for example. And also the documentation that you build. Like, one of the things that that could help is if you can actually, even though some of the programming languages, in a way, they're some kind of pseudocode of English, having the documentation, easily translatable to different languages, and even having a translation API embedded in the developer portal could actually help with that. There's different ways that you can localize the content as well, in terms of the examples that you use, in terms of the how you showcase the information. There's a little bit about that in terms of when I was at TomTom, in terms of how you show location data, in terms of showing it in even the name of a city or the name of a place, in which language or which alphabet you use to showcase, or even having the options to showcase it in different ones. Those are little things that you can do, but the main guideline there is make people feel welcome no matter where they're coming from, feeling understood and welcome, and that they can ask the questions that they need to ask.
And I think it's also very important, because the essence of community is actually people working together. Each has obviously his own goals for doing this, but they're all working together to create, something and help each other create. So, yeah, I really like even the smallest things you mentioned, for example, localization can make a huge difference for someone, who might not be so proficient in English, for example, which more or less I think it's the main language, where documentation or support is listed at.
Yeah, I mean, and I understand that if somebody's starting a community, like, you cannot do everything at the beginning, but just keep these principles in mind to make sure that as you grow, you can welcome more and more people and make those people feel welcome.
Yeah, I think this is very key here. Also, in your chapter on the book, you say at some point, meet your developers where they are. How can you do that?
Well, I think a little bit. That was a little bit what I was alluding to, and you can have you can interpret that in a couple different ways. In terms of meeting your developers where they are, one thing is what do they read, which publications do they read, where do they hang out, if it's a specific meetup or specific thread, and they're part of specific conversations. Go and meet them there. Be active in those places. The other one is meet them where they are in terms of their level of skill and what they're looking, right? In terms of, you may have developers that are beginners, or you may have developers that are experts, and they may have different needs, but they also may be able to help each other out. So, make sure that you welcome different levels of questions in your community, and you also don't alienate people if they're just starting, because those will be the experts of the future, and you want them within the fold, right? So meet your developers where they are in terms of where do they are, where do they hang out, what kind of publications they read, and also their level of expertise.
Yeah, that's great. And meeting developers at different levels, it's also key, because if you want to empower every developer, and I think that's the actual goal, as you said, you need to be able to cater to the easiest, let's say, answer, the basic stuff, but also the more advanced of people, even taking the product few steps further.
Yeah, and some of the ways I've done that, and we've done that in the different developer relations teams that I've been part of, is being very cognizant of the kind of sample code and examples that we use to show applications, and even open source an application and put some code on GitHub that people can play with. And instead of starting from scratch, having a code that you can start from and then modify to understand how the different technologies work, what are the inputs, what are the outputs, what can you expect when, seed it with some seed data to play with, and so on and so forth.
And another point here, when we talk about inclusivity, I think we also need to take into account, the diversity of different people that are part of this community. So if we take, a step back and look at it from a developer marketing, perspective, how do you think is the best way to segment your developer audience?
Well, there's different ways to segment them, but what has worked well for me in the past has been in terms of not demographic, just because, as we said, there may be people of different ages and with different kind of experiences, even from other industries, that are just becoming developers. But it has been more about the developer in context, right? I mean, a developer could be somebody working in a big enterprise. It could be also somebody being from a software engineer to a CTO of a startup, to somebody to a hobbyist. And a hobbyist could be either a student, let's say, building a project, or one of the other two developers at night, right? So for me, it's been about stages of engagement and making sure, and each one brings a different value to your community and to your technology goals, right? I mean, and I would love to be able to cater to the hobbyists first, because they actually become the most active and engaged with your technology, and in a way they become your ambassador. And if you stay top of mind with them, they will take you along for the ride anywhere they go, when they build their own company or when they go and work at another company. And that has worked very well for me. It's a long-term investment, and you need to make sure that you're able to do so. But I think that has been helpful, a good way for me to look at it.
Yeah, that's great. Do you also maybe want to talk about, what are the benefits for the community and the company, of a more diverse community, after you make it more inclusive to more people? What are the benefits of diversity, actually?
Happy to touch on that. So in terms of the benefit of diversity, and we kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier in the conversation. For me, what has been very rewarding is a more diverse group of people comes up with different ideas. And for me, what has been rewarding and refreshing is to see when you open your community to a more diverse group of people, they come up with very different ideas on how to use your product because of the needs that they have. Right? As I was telling you, for example, in terms of location technology, different applications for emergency response, and enabling certain kind of transactions within a certain geofence, and so on. And now, in terms of motion-based behavioral biometrics, how to enable different kind of authentications based on the way you move and walk, from opening doors, unlocking doors, to actually enabling certain transactions to happen with frictionless authentication in the background, and also detecting suspicious activity and fraud based on some movements that you don't usually see. So it has been amazing to see that, and also, for example, different kind of geographic places, in terms of geographical diversity, have different threats, no, in terms of cybersecurity. So it was very interesting to see, for example, some gig economy companies now during the pandemic, that have evolved not only from doing ride sharing and ride hailing, but doing more goods delivery, and helping them verify that the driver that registered is the right driver, fulfilling a service, or the service provider, verifying that service provider, and also, making sure that the recipient of that service is the right person. So those are kind of the use cases that I've seen all around the world, evolving also with the pandemic at hand, and being able to make a difference there.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty clear, and I really hope that the people listening to this will also agree with me. The more inclusive your community is, the more your doors, in quotes, of course, the word doors, are open to more people to join and feel welcome. You will attract a bigger number, and out of this bigger number, you get a bigger diversity of not only people, but also ideas. And then, as you said it, and you just said it, and we also mentioned it earlier in this interview, people using your product to create things that you may not have even imagined, while you were building it. And of course, this is something that benefits everyone, from the developer joining the community that allows him, allow them access to questions, or they're stuck somewhere and they get some questions, all the way through your company to helping society, create new things, reach new goals.
Absolutely. And that reminds me also, I mean, one of the trends that one of the graphs on your trends link talks about, the percentage of people that are involved in open source or open sourcing some things. And I think it's been amazing to see the open source community grow. And it's not that you have to open source everything, but if you put some code out there that helps people understand and use your technology, and they can actually combine that with other things, that also helps with diversity and inclusion. Diversity, as you very well said, diversity of ideas, diversity of applications, diversity of use cases.
Exactly, and open source is always a favorite topic to discuss, both in the podcast, but also us and within the company. We talk about it a lot, and the previous Future Developer Summit, was devoted in part to open source and DevOps, and open source, sometimes equals accessibility, which again allows a huge amount of people, do something and create something. And many technologies, that are standard, let's say now, have evolved so from open source project.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, discussing, all these different things and even different use cases, we've seen that, things evolve, and this is the natural thing to do. So what do you see in the future of developer relations? How do you see developer relations evolving?
I mean, there's different ways that this could go, but what I can tell you is who is a developer is evolving. The role of the developer is evolving and having more power and influence to choose what technologies are being used within a company and different solutions. So I see the role of the developer becoming more and more relevant. I see the developer community growing. I see a lot more people learning how to code, and a lot more people learning how to build stuff, which I think is all good for a growing industry of developer marketing and relations. And I do think that we are going to see, I don't believe that everybody will need to build their own community, but I do believe that we're going to see some communities that are for everybody with different themes and sub themes, and we will that will actually foster collaboration, and it's very interesting. So if I take a step back, what I see in terms of, it's very interesting, right? I mean, if you look at programming languages, we started with assembly language, and then we move up, we move up and different levels of abstractions to have some kind of a pseudocode now that it looks kind of like English with inputs and outputs, right? And what I feel is that now we see companies evolving to provide APIs and SDKs. And in a way, the APIs and SDKs are the new functions and libraries that you would have within an operating system before. It's like another level of abstraction to provide an operating system for life. And hence, the role of the developer will become more and more relevant to put all these APIs and SDKs together to build something meaningful that makes a difference in people's lives.
I'm looking forward to that, actually. yeah, everything evolving like that. And, the future of developer relations, obviously, it's key to seeing how things are going to look like in a few years from now. And also this, spoiler alert, again, this will be the theme of our Future Developer Summit, which we will announce very soon. So if you want to learn more about it, stay tuned at futuredeveloper.io. There's also going to be a community edition there, which will be free to access. Leandro, if someone wants to hear more from you, since I really enjoyed our talk, I think there might be quite a lot of people. How can they reach you?
Oh, they can reach me. They can find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is basically @LeanMarg, LeanMarg. Leandromarg, the first 4 letters of my first name and last name, and also Leandro Margulis on LinkedIn.
That's great. And now it's been great having you. First of all, I'm very glad you could join us. And I really liked our talk, and I hope our listeners would do so. To close, on a nice note, what was one good thing that happened in 2020?
I'm actually blessed that I actually started my new role at Unify ID in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic. So there's a lot of opportunities out there, and getting a chance to work with a great group of people. Even though I've been only to the office twice, it's amazing to how Google Meet and Slack has carried us through the whole year, and being able to build meaningful relationships that way, which is not something I would have expected before.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Same here. So everyone, thank you for listening to Under the Hood of Developer Marketing, the podcast devoted to developer marketing and relations. You can listen to all episodes, find free resources and the latest news at devrelx.com, and you can subscribe to our bite-sized bi-weekly digest or follow us on Twitter at /DataHQ for regular updates. Leandro, it's been great having you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for the invite.